from Hudson Institute, and legislator Chen Guanting. Welcome, everyone. And to kick it off, to start, I want to welcome Dr. Lin Yuming from the Formosan Republican Association to deliver us a short speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Formosan Republican Association, it's my pleasure to welcome all you. We are honored to have with the former U.S. Secretary, Michael Pompeo, with us to deliver important keynote speech. It's my special privilege to introduce Mike Pompeo. He's a distinguished and respected leader, diplomat, and statesman. He served as the 70th U.S. Secretary of the States from the 2018 to 2021, playing a pivotal role in promoting American foreign policy and strengthening international partnership. Prior to his tenure as the U.S. Secretary of State, he served as the Director of Central Intelligence Agency, where he deeply committed to safeguarding global security. As you know, Michael Pompeo, he graduated first in his class from the prestigious U.S. Military Academy at the West Point. He also earned the law degree from the Harvard University. He has a diverse career, including the Army office and a successful businessman and the Congress represented the Kansas State 4th District. Since its founding, Formosan Republican Association has been committed to advance conservative value. Our mission is to protect freedom, defend democracy, stand on human rights, and ensure that the global order is fronting injustice and responsibility. Today, Michael Pompeo, which is strongly affirmed, share this principle and the mission. Mr. Pompeo continues to support the freedom, democracy, and cooperation between the nations. His visit to Taiwan shows us strongly support for U.S. and Taiwan friendship. Taiwan is an important role in the Indo-Pacific region. Please give me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Michael Pompeo.
Can you all hear me in the back? Good? Maybe not. Maybe it's going to have to be closer. Maybe I'll have to hold it. Yeah. Good morning. Thank you all for being with me. Yeah. I'm glad to be here with you. I live not far from Washington, D.C. now. They're about to get 20 centimeters of snow. We'll shut the city down for a year or 6 months. My home state of Kansas is going to get twice that much snow, 40 centimeters. It'll be back up tomorrow. Knows how to deal with difficult weather. Happy New Year and many blessings to you for 2025. It is lovely to be back here in this new year at the start of the year where fresh beginnings are always on our mind. How it is we can continue to build on the things we have done together. And I want to especially thank you, the Formosan Republican organization, for hosting me here today, to give me this incredible opportunity to speak to you, and the folks in this room, and this distinguished set of panelists to be part of but also to the people of Taiwan, and about the prayer that I have for the people of Taiwan, that as we talk about shared commitments, that the United States can and must and will continue to do its part alongside the people of Taiwan and frankly the people of the Pacific, including those here in East Asia. It's an absolute imperative. 4 years ago, I made my first trip here to Taiwan. I was a recently former Secretary of State. I'm still a former Secretary of State, just a civilian. But I was deeply moved by the hospitality. I couldn't come here when I was a secretary. And one day, an American Secretary of State will come to this place. Perhaps, Lord willing, it'll be Secretary Rubio, who I know shares my view and love and understands the importance of this shared relationship as well. I think in short order he'll be confirmed and he will be on mission working on this very thing. And I know we'll talk about that some today. I spoke last time I was with you, now just a few months back, in my third or fourth trip here, about the amazing work that's done here, the technology that's here. I came here for President Lai's swearing in after the election. And I want to talk about the set of values that underlays this shared mission, because I think that drives. When I sometimes hear Taiwanese people question whether the United States will be there when it matters most, there's a political response, but importantly there is a moral response. There is a response that stems from our shared value set. My former boss won a pretty resounding election now, 2 months ago. He will be certified today in a few hours and then sworn in less than 2 weeks. We had developed what we believed was a pretty effective model for deterrence against adversaries who wanted to undermine the set of rules and value sets that the people of Taiwan and the people of the United States hold dear. A very different set of values than those that sit in mainland China, inside of the Chinese Communist Party. I actually think that the Chinese people mostly hold those values, but that it is their leadership that has desperately failed them and has driven them towards a model of authoritarianism and indecency, and does not serve them well, and creates risks of war, risks of economic harm to all of us, people here in Taiwan and to the United States. Succeeding in continuing to build this model out will not solely rest at the feet of President Trump and his team. It will be shared with Taiwan. You will be crucial in this effort. Free nations, especially those in this area, in the Indo-Pacific, must send an unambiguous message to Beijing that you are free, that Taiwan is free, that Taiwan is independent, and it's going to stay that way. Nothing's going to change it. It is an imperative that we speak with that clarity. I've spoken to this multiple times. That's one of the reasons I remain sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party. I could not have landed in Beijing. Your airport was lovely here in Taipei. Xi Jinping will not determine the future of Asia or of Taiwan. You will. We will, together. We'll do it alongside Japan. They'll share that. We'll do it alongside the Australians, alongside the Vietnamese, the Philippines, the Indonesians, and the Indians. This region shares a set of democratic values. We have different cultures, our histories are different, but the central understanding of respect for basic human decency and for property rights and the rule of law is something that we all hold dearly and we share. And that if we stand together and work together on this common mission set, we can deliver. We can get that very deterrence. President Trump understands this. I spent 4 years with him. 1.5 years as his head spy, and then 2.5 years as his head diplomat. I won't tell you which one I enjoyed more. You have every reason to believe in America's continued resolve to deliver on this. I can't imagine America's commitment wavering. We'll have fights. We'll argue about things. We'll have different views. This is what nations do. This is what business people do. This is not uncommon. And we should fight hard. You should fight hard. You should advocate for your interests, and you should do that with a smile and decency. I pray that we'll do the same. But never mistake differences in ideas or in process for an absence of shared commitment. That would be foolish. It is what Xi Jinping wants you to believe. He wants you to believe that you are alone. He wants you to believe that this shared set of values is just a facade and not real. It's not true. we are right, he is not. You know, when I look back at my time as Secretary of State, I consider it the most important diplomatic work that I did in this region. I watched it in the halls of Congress. I saw them come to see President Trump and our team's leadership as giving them the space to do the right thing. You should know it transcended administrations. I think we built on what President Obama had done before. I think that President Biden's team built on some of the things that we did as well. If there's one set of policies where there was a through line, real continuity, it would have been in this space. Look, there's things I'm critical of. I think President Biden's team should have done better, different, faster. But in the end, I think you will continue to see this through line across a broad political perspective inside the United States. You know, in the United States, you all watched an incredibly contentious election. I lived it. I was out campaigning for President Trump and for Senate candidates all across the country. Why did President Trump prevail? I think he articulated an idea of free speech and rule of law and decency and American responsibility to lead across the world and to deter our adversaries that the American people grasped. I think they understood that the world is a more dangerous place than it was 4 years ago, and that had America done a better job at deterring our adversaries, especially our authoritarian adversaries, that risk would have been diminished. But this makes sense because this sits at the core of Abraham Lincoln's party, my party, the Republican Party inside the United States. They're the same values that you all have in the Formosa Republican Association. They are, in my judgment, largely universal values, and it's all about the execution. How do you deliver? You know, I've watched too our country go through lots of change. This modernization, in the same way that Taiwan is going through a massive modernization, the whole world is. By the way, you all are driving some of the technologies, innovation, creativity, manufacturing capabilities, commercial processes are being driven by this relatively small place. You way out punch your weight. That matters to the United States. It is an imperative for us to have good friends and partners that can do that. And I think what you all do here incredibly well, and I hope we continue to, is to balance that modernization against the traditions that we all hold dear, the places from which our values are derived. If we in the United States walk away from our traditions, our founding ideas, we'll be unmoored, and we will not have a center, and it will come unwound. And the Chinese Communist Party spends a great deal of its time and energy, its united front, its efforts to unwind that understanding. They want the next generation of Americans not to appreciate the traditions and the decency of the United States of America, our founding ideas that are drafted into our Constitution, the way we govern. They're trying to do the same thing here, right? They want to tell a wolf tale. They want to tell, that's an American euphemism for like a lie, right? They want to tell this storyline about reunification. We all know, you all have lived it, you've experienced it, your parents have experienced it, your aunts and uncles and ancestors have experienced it. There's no more reunification of Taiwan with China than a man in the moon. This is an effort to destroy the sovereignty of this place, the uniqueness and independence of this place. And so as you nurture your proud and distinct cultural heritage while embracing that change, all the change that the world has, I hope the world will learn from your success at doing that. I personally am counting on you to continue this. You know, I watch too, you have a pretty robust, contentious political process here too. I get, you've got conservatives, you've got liberals, they got them all. We have the same thing. Let's not fear that. Let's understand that is our strength. Those of us who have one set of views about how things ought to roll ought to fight really hard for them, vigorously. In the political space, when I say fight, I'm speaking about a political process. I'm talking about a democratic set of processes. I pray that the democracies of the world can do that, and that we don't devolve into ways to fight for our ideas that are not decent, are not consistent with our traditions. There is a real risk. And whether it's the Russians or the Iranians or the Chinese governments or the North Koreans or the Venezuelans, by the way, now I think I've listed them all. I'm pretty close. They want us to go a different path. They don't want us to defend those ideas that we hold most strongly. They want us to question them. And when we fight, they want us to fight in the streets. And they want to show pictures and sow chaos inside of our countries. Do not let that happen. This would be a fundamental mistake. I remember a great story. The New York Times wrote a story one day that said, Mike Pompeo, worst Secretary of State ever. My son called me and said, hey, Dad, there was a Secretary of State who lasted only 11 days. Surely you're better than him. Like, you can't be the worst. So we called ourselves like team number 2. We were in second worst. The president called me, it would have been in January, now 8 years ago. In January, 4 years ago, excuse me, January of 2021. And he'd read a headline from the Washington Post that said, Mike Pompeo, President Trump's most loyal cabinet member. And so he called and said, did you see the Washington Post? They said you were my most loyal cabinet member. And I said, Mr. President, they did not mean that as a compliment. And he said, no, you're right, click. We all know what it means to serve and to try to deliver on things that are bigger than us, things that matter to us, things that will come behind us and post-date us. Some of the work that I did as Secretary of State didn't last very long. The next administration came in and had a different view. They won an election and had a different view. We should all work on the things that matter most, the things that are lasting. When I watch what takes place here, I watch your amazing technologists, your amazing engineers. I watch the decency of hardworking people in every line of work, from generating the electricity that runs all of this place to the people that deliver food and services across the country. And I don't know them well, but I know who they are, because I know they reflect the same kind of people in the place that I call home, in Kansas. People who want to raise their families, to take care of them, to live their lives, to practice their faith, whatever that faith may be, to be left alone by their government whenever possible, and to be able to pass on to their children and their family something that is better, in the same way that their parents passed on to them even greater and bigger opportunities. Your people engaged in a vigorous election not too long ago. So did we. It was, if any of you traveled to the United States during that time, I apologize. Watching TV was brutal. To watch the advertisements. These are important political processes. The fact that every side was able to say their piece and make their arguments to the American people matters, because the basis upon which this next government, President Trump, our new House, our new Senate, the basis on which they will gain their true authority, their true power, is the fact that they competed to make arguments, not to fight, not to throw stones, but to make arguments about the trajectory for our nation. This is what you do here in Taiwan as well. And I tell that long story because it gets to the very thing that's here, this idea of a shared commitment across the value set. You live it. People of different faiths live alongside each other. You coexist. And contrast this with what happens on the other side of the strait, where a government denies the capacity for people to practice any faith, to demands of the people that they worship their government, and that they not ask too many questions. There is no debate. There is simply a model that says that the government top down will drive things, and you, the free-willed people who possess the inherent dignity that God provides to them, you are nothing. You are simply vassals, tools of the state. We can't let that become normative in the rest of the world, and we certainly can't let that become what takes place in this special place as well. I wanted to highlight that, and I'll end here, and we'll have a good conversation, because these aspects of Taiwan's governance and society matter. They matter for the shared commitment between the United States and Taiwan. You all have the responsibility to lead. You have the responsibility to act in a positive and transforming way. You can fundamentally transform what happens inside of China. I'm convinced of that, and not the other way around. Every successful election, every positive diplomatic engagement, every gathering of organizations like this one They're proof to the people who live inside the Chinese tyranny that their future need not be dominated by this authoritarian regime, the Chinese Communist Party, that another path exists. You demonstrate how rich and how wonderful life can be for people here in this region. I pray too that you'll keep up with technology, that you'll keep building stuff that matters to the United States and to the world. Every success that you achieve in this regard is proof that the Chinese people can thrive in a model that is capitalist, free, innovative, risk-taking, all of the things that don't exist inside of the Chinese Communist Party. And finally, I hope you too will lead and help other nations in the region come to accept their responsibility as well, whether that is South Korea and Japan. You all provide enormous bulwark to this very effort. Deepen those strategic relationships. Work on them. I get it. It's hard. I know the histories, not as well as some of you, but I know these histories. We can break them. We can move past them. We can honor them. We can honor those traditions. But the ambiguity that has existed about this place for an awfully long time creates risk. I think it misleads the international community, and it increases aggression in the region. I have said that the era of strategic ambiguity ought to be over, that it is time to acknowledge just the facts on the ground. One of the things I was most proud of, and that I think President Trump will do again, is to accept the world as it is, and the facts as they are, and achieve better outcomes, not from some ideal or fantasy, but based on the reality. Well, the reality of this place is that it is governed by a free and independent government, elected by the people of this place. And we should collectively, Taiwan and the United States seize this moment. We can collectively lead the free world. And when we do, for you and for us, there will be that very bright future that each of us prays for those who come behind us. Thanks for the chance to be with you all this morning. I look forward very much to our conversation. Bless you and thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Pompeo. Please sit down here. And before we start our panel discussion, let's take a group photo. So just please remain seated, and we'll take some photos. No, I think you should just remain seated. Yeah.
Big group.
Alrighty. So if you can, please sit closer to the center so that everyone is in the frame. Smile, everyone. 3, 2, 1. Okay. You want to do one with the thumbs up, maybe? Yeah? Yeah, great. 3, 2, 1. When we start our panel discussion, first we'll start with the panelists. There will be like half our panel discussion, and to each and every one of the panelists, please be concise and just go directly to your question. One question, then Secretary Pompeo answers. And then there will be some time for the media and for the audience to ask questions, also around half hour. So today we're gonna be having a conversation in English, but if you ask your questions in Mandarin, I can translate for Secretary Pompeo. Yeah. Thank you.
怎么做？
有牌子。Chairs 还没有 chair 还没有拿出来，椅子还没有拿出来。他们有椅子，他们会拿出来。坐在哪里？ 1, 2, 1, 2.
You don't read Chinese, that's about it.
All right, so right now we'll have a half-hour discussion, and let me introduce all of the panelists today. Secretary Pompeo, and then I will be naming people in the order they're going to ask questions. So first of all, there is Professor Minju Zheng from National Taiwan University. Then the current legislator from the Democratic Progressive Party, Mr. Chen Guanting. Then the executive director of the National Policy Foundation, Dr. Wang Hongren. Then member of the Defense and Resilience Committee, associate professor in the Department of Communication Management at Shixing University, Lucy Liu. And executive director of the European Valley Center for Security Policy, Jakub Janda. And my name is Stanisław Katkowski. I'm a journalist and a human rights researcher here in Taiwan. So let's begin our conversation. Start with Professor Ming. One question, just be concise, and straight to the point, and then Secretary Pompeo will answer. Thank you.
Okay. How much time do I have?
Try to be concise.
Let me do my best. It is my great honor to be here. Upon receiving the invitation from the FRA, and I was saying to myself, given Secretary Pompeo's expertise and experience, I can easily come up with 500,000 questions, if not 1 million. But he asked me to be concise, so I'll start with the first one. Will Trump really give up Ukraine? As I see it, it's like he's prodding the Europeans to work a little bit harder to help the Ukrainians. So I think he's rearranging his strategic priority, and that's my view. So he's trying to let go of Ukraine for a while, but refocus attention to mainland China, to communist China. And that's my take of it. I would like to solicit your view on the question. That's the first one.
Well, look, history unfolds in ways that are always surprising. But the best evidence of how President Trump will address the issues in Europe today, including the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, is to go look how we handled it for his previous 4 years. And in the previous 4 years, we were able to deter Vladimir Putin. Right? So President Putin took a fifth of Ukraine when President Obama was in office. He didn't take an inch of Ukraine when President Trump was in office. And not long after President Trump left, he went to war with Ukraine again. And so I suspect we will return to a model that has a much more strengthened deterrence model. Your question of will he, I forget what you said, will he allow Ukraine to fall? First of all, I don't think the Ukrainian people would permit that to happen, but second, I think the United States will continue to do the things that are necessary to deter the Russians. And that is, it's never easy, it's never a straight line, it is never riskless. All of those things are true, but President Trump's time on stage, I think, commanded a place for U.S. leadership in Europe, which did two things. I think to your second point, which convinced the Europeans to be more serious about their own security and their defense, to not just about spending money, but all the things that go into that, all the resilience, all the work that needs to be done to convince the bad guys that you're not a patsy, that you right to lose deterrence. He convinced the Europeans to become more serious about that after 25 or 30 years of complacency. And then second, I think too, President Trump's model had convinced Vladimir Putin that the cost of aggression in Ukraine would have been higher than the benefits. Right? I view Vladimir Putin as someone who very much knows how to do math. And he made a mistake. They failed. They thought they could actually roll through Kyiv, so he got that wrong. But his math was very clear. He believed that the benefit to Russia would exceed the cost because he didn't think that the West was prepared, Europe and the United States was prepared to defend this thing called Ukraine. And I'm convinced President Trump will restore President Putin's perception of costs associated with continued aggression, whether it happens in 24 hours or 24 weeks. I can't answer, but I'm convinced that things will look very different.
Okay, the second part of the question is he rearranging his strategic priority? Is he seeing Communist China as a bigger threat, or what?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. By the way, I think President Biden did this too. I think President Biden understood that the singular threat to the West was the Chinese Communist Party. I don't credit President Biden with having done enough to have actually executed against that, but no, President Trump will certainly do that. We shouldn't forget President Biden also got bogged down in a conflict in the Middle East over the last now year and 4 months because of a failed model of deterrence again. And so a lot of resources from the senior teams inside the U.S. government have had to spend the last 16 months trying to help get hostages back, try to take down the risk to the Gulf Arab states there. And so I think that did cause them to take some of their focus off of this region in ways that weren't helpful.
So the follow-up question is, how does Mr. Trump, or how does President Trump look at Communist China? As a contender or as an enemy, just like what Reagan saw the former Soviet Union? My question is, supposedly my question is he really determined to end communism in some way?
I'd go back to one of the most important things that was said in the Trump administration in our national security strategy. For the first time, we referred to them as an adversary. Mm-hmm. Right? This language mattered. It was hard fought. A bunch of us were in there arguing for even stronger language, but we made clear that this was something that posed a substantive risk to the United States in real time, not 25 years from now, not 5 years from now, but in real time, pose a substantive risk. And I'm near certain that the next Trump administration will have a similar model. I know most of the senior folks who are going to be part of the team, and they would share that view as well. There are complex questions about how to achieve that. We battled them too. Much like Taiwan, we had a significant piece of our economy tied directly to activity inside of China, and so you have economic considerations that bear on this as well. But in terms of mindset and how the president will approach it, he's determined to get them to stop killing Americans with fentanyl, He is determined to build a strong American military deterrent, and those are focused fundamentally on the risk from Xi Jinping and his Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, for the first one, my last question would be, how does President Trump would look at the effect of COVID-19? Because it started in Communist China, and then they concealed the truth from the world, and you suffered a lot from that, and in a way that it stole his presidency. So how does he look at it?
Yeah.
Would he take any revenge on it?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, he was mocked for calling it the Wuhan virus. I was mocked for saying that it came from the lab in Wuhan in March of 2020, when in fact I knew that it had. And now I think most of the world agrees that that's the case. Not everyone, but most folks. And your point is very well taken. They had a virus escape from their laboratory, and instead of doing the right thing and saying, we have a problem, let's all collectively go try to address this and mitigate the risk, they concealed it. They threw journalists in jail, they had doctors disappear, and the end result was millions of people dead and massive impact that is still reverberating throughout the global economy. I'm confident the president is mindful of that. I don't think that will be the driving force behind his policy with respect to how he's thinking about confronting the challenge from the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you so much.
I think it's going to ask you 500,000 questions, but I think I'll stop here. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Thank you, Professor Min. And the next question will be from Chen Guanting, the legislator. You can have my microphone. I can give you mine. From the Democratic Progressive Party.
Thank you. Secretary Pompeo, in 2021, you lifted all self-imposed restrictions on official U.S.-Taiwan interactions, marking a significant breakthrough in the U.S.-Taiwan relations. Thank you very much for that. Acts like the Taiwan Travel Act have further enhanced bilateral exchanges. However, the challenges remain regarding renaming Taiwan's office in the United States. So do you foresee the possibility of advancing policies such as renaming Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office to the Taiwan Representative Office? What impact?
Yeah.
Now
you're trying to get me in trouble. Exactly. Yes. Look, we did make progress towards the end. By the way, we were too late. The Trump administration, this was near the end of our time, in the final year of President Trump's time in office, to make these changes. There were big fights inside the State Department about what was appropriate, what was useful, what was constructive, and in the end I concluded this is silly. We should just get this right. We should recognize the reality. Miles, who's with me here today, was alongside me making the same arguments, and we ultimately did that. We didn't get all the way. We didn't recognize it in the same way we recognize others. It's still referred to as DECRO. I hope they'll get there. I hope they will conclude that they should just fundamentally recognize that Taiwan is this separate thing, and when one does that, one ought to treat it as that thing, right? It's almost pedantic. It's almost fifth gradish, but one way to think about it is: do you truly believe that Taiwan is this separate entity, governed, free, separate from it? If you do, one ought to recognize its right to have a relationship that is the equivalent of all the other diplomatic relationships inside the United States. And we tried to get a long ways. We made real progress. There's still more work to do. I hope they, I hope this administration does, and I hope whoever it is, Democrat or Republican, continues to build on that.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Another question, and that will be my last question, is regarding to TikToks. TikTok has over 120 million users in the United States, and ByteDance could potentially be compelled to share some data with the Chinese government. So my question is, do you see as the primary challenges TikTok will face in the United States moving forward? How can the President Trump's administration balance need for free flow, information flow, with the imperative to safeguard national security?
Yeah, it's actually not that hard. First of all, we have a big date, January 19th. There is a law, statute, requiring Chinese divestment from ownership in that entity. We'll see what the courts do. We'll see what the Biden administration does. They'll still be in charge on January 19th till noon the next day. So it'll be fascinating. I don't have a prediction. You all can watch it unfold alongside me. But step back for a moment, if you will. The United States has, for decades, had a set of rules about foreign ownership of American media. No foreign country, no foreign enterprise can own a broadcast station. You can't own a media outlet. You can't own an American network. And somehow, with the advent of social media, we forgot the core rule, which is that it cannot be the case that adversarial nations have the capacity to control media outlets inside of your country. That's the rule that we should adopt. I think, frankly, every country ought to adopt that rule to protect themselves. TikTok is just an example. It's not, everyone focuses on TikTok, and I get it. It is problematic in its own way. But what TikTok itself is just a bunch of code, right? Just an algorithm. The challenge is that you have the Chinese Communist Party feeding misinformation to American kids. And that is dangerous for any country to allow an adversary to do that. So we ought to prevent that. We know how to do it. Technology is there. Now it's just a matter of political will. You don't have to take TikTok away from the kids. I think there's a better use for their time. They should go outside and play and push each other to the ground, whatever it is kids do. Or maybe study the Bible. I don't know. I can think of 1,000 things. But suffice it to say, you don't have to take it away from them. You can give them, but you can't have a communist party controlling the messaging that flows through that unencumbered, unfiltered by parents. And that's the task for, probably going to end up being the task for the next administration.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Thank you, Legislator Chen. And the next question will be from the Executive Director of the National Policy Foundation, Dr. Wang Hongren.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much to the Formosa Republican Association for the kind invitation, giving me this opportunity to share the stage with Honorable Secretary Pompeo. My name is Hongren Wang. Here is my first question. I only have one question, actually. We all know that the Trump administration is about to take office, and we, Taiwanese people, anticipate that Trump's second term will be quite different from his first. For the Taiwanese public, Trump's references to Taiwan during his campaign have largely been framed in a negative light. However, we also have noticed that his new personnel appointments include individuals who have been very friendly toward Taiwan. Given this situation, the Taiwanese people, including myself, perceive the United States' new administration's policy toward Taiwan as contradictory and uncertain. So from your perspective, how should we approach and deal with this new Trump administration? Thank you.
Yeah, I understand your point. I actually think that the framing of President Trump's view of this is misperceived. I get it. He's got a Twitter account. I get all of that. I always, when people ask me about this, whether it's Europeans who are concerned about it or folks in the Middle East, whatever it may be, I always say, go look at what he did for 4 years. The best indication of how President Trump thinks about this is what actions he took when he had the capacity to actually take actions. Whether it was what we did with the embassy or with your diplomats or the work that we did in the Indo-Pacific, beginning what the Biden administration continued to build out in the Quad and with AUKUS, whether it was the work that we did in the Pacific Islands, we understood the threat to the region from the singular, actually the two, count North Korea. I kind of think of them as one, with North Korea being a vassal state of the Chinese Communist Party. But suffice to say, we were trying to reduce nuclear risk. That's the conversations with Chairman Kim that I had. And second, to make clear to the Chinese Communist Party that the days of them being treated differently in the international community than any other nations treated are over. And that they were going to have to begin to behave the same way others did. That's one of the reasons we left the Paris Climate Accords, just as an example. Right? People think of that as a environmental statement. It was actually a statement that said, are you kidding me? Does anybody think the Chinese Communist Party is going to comply with the Paris Climate Accords? Anybody? Go ahead, put your hand up. Right? They're building coal-fired power plants at a rate that is staggering. And yet we were going to restrain ourselves. We were going to destroy the American economy and allow the Chinese economy to continue to grow. This is foolish. And I think what you'll see is President Trump have as his core driving principle the idea of reciprocity. What does that mean? That means if we have a set of rules at the World Trade Organization, so do they. If we have a set of restrictions that apply to us in a certain degree, well, so must they. And when they don't, we're not gonna play. That's what I think you will see. So, for example, today a Chinese company would like to buy farmland near Fort Riley, Kansas, an important American military base. They can do it. Imagine a U.S. company trying to buy land near a Chinese military facility. It seems unlikely to me. I'm laughing. You should laugh. Like, it's not happening, right? Reciprocity. If they won't permit us to do it, fine. You can't do it. We're not going to play patsy. We're not going to play fool. We're not going to allow them to operate under a different set of rules. Today, an American diplomat serving in Beijing wants to travel to meet with a business leader or go to a ceremony or an event. They must file a report, ask for permission, have a minder come, probably from the MSS, the Chinese Intelligence Service, travel alongside of them, very restricted in what they can say, right? Today, when a Chinese diplomat wants to go see the CEO of an American company, what do? They get in their embassy vehicle and they drive and go see them. Okay. That's just dumb. And so I am hopeful that President Trump will drive, and I could come up with, I gave you 6 examples or 4, I could come up with 50, there are probably 500, where the central thesis has to be, we are no longer going to permit you to subsidize and dump drugs into our country. Right? We won't do it to you, you're not going to do it to us. So this idea of reciprocity is the central feature, I think, is as you all think about how the United States will deal with the broader set of issues, and this will certainly be for Taiwan as well, as we will treat the Chinese Communist Party the same way they choose to treat you and to treat us. We're going to demand that they engage in the world stage on a level playing field with a same set of rules that give everyone, whether it's Estonia or Taiwan or Alabama, the same opportunity to succeed. And so I would, you suggested some nervousness. I shouldn't forget too, there's a Congress that's got its own views that will have substantial say in many of these policies as well. But I would suggest less nervousness and more willingness to be forthright and engage. If that's the case, if Taiwan engages academically, engages commercially, engages government to government in deep and consistent ways, the relationship will be really good, and the opportunity to create more freedom for Taiwan, for the United States, and for the entire region will increase dramatically. That would be my approach if I were sitting on the outside looking and thinking about how to address President Trump's second administration.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Lucy Liu, who is member of the Defense and Resilience Committee and an associate professor in the Department of Communication Management at Shishin University.
Mr. Pompeo, it's my great honor to be here. And I'm also the member in FRA, Formosa Republican Association. And so I have some questions, but I'm only allowed to ask one. So
try to sneak a second one and go fast.
Okay. So since I am the member in the whole Society Defense Resilience Society Committee in Presidential Office, so I would like to say that Taiwan now we are building our civil defense system, try to fight China, and not only from the government but from all the organizations, civil organizations. So we have done a lot of things, such as community training to respond to the emergency response, and also try to build a more robust electricity grid, and maybe also some to fight with the misinformation. So what advice do you have for Taiwan to build our civil defense system?
It's a fantastic question, an incredibly important one. You hit on a couple. This misinformation challenge is real. We suffered in the United States as well. The United Front, the Chinese, it's their espionage effort and their misinformation effort and frankly their infiltration effort inside of nearly every country is real. They impact not only ordinary citizens, but they're going after your political leaders as well, shaping, influencing, making friends with, all the things that governments do that are seeking to undermine democracies. They're doing it everywhere. They're doing it in Japan, they're doing it in Seoul, I think we can see. They're doing it here, they're doing it in Houston and in New York City. In fact, the largest spy operation ever taken down inside the United States wasn't Russian, it was Chinese. We closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas in 2019, I think. It was one of my moments of pure joy. You don't get many. So yes, this misinformation lake matters. Second, think basic resources, the capacities to sustain in the moment of a crisis. So this will benefit you when there's an earthquake or a typhoon, but also in the event that there is a man-made crisis that takes place here. So water purification, the capacity to move that water around. You're an island nation, right? Power. You're going to need more power in Taiwan, whether there's a crisis or not. Your businesses are growing. The whole world has got massive power demands all across the world as AI continues to advance more power. That will place incredible burdens on your reserves, gas reserves, energy reserves more broadly, and then the capacity not only to have the energy, gas, solar, wind, whatever it may be, base load power, but also to transmit it, to get it to where businesses and homes, people need it. Build that up too. And there are lots of other elements of real resilience. I'll give you the last thought. The other element of resilience is cultural. It is political. It requires enormous leadership. It demands that the government speak to the people sincerely and honestly and says, here's the places we have risk. Here's a big country over there. It's got big aircraft, big Navy, real capacity. And so we, the people of Taiwan, care about our democracy, and we are prepared to accept costs to sustain that democracy. And that is a human element of preparing resilience, the capacity to be resilient. We saw it with Ukrainian people. No one had any sense of would the Ukrainian people actually, in the moment, stay. Two things happened. Anybody can have whatever view they want of President Zelensky, but he stayed. He did not flee. You should remember, not a handful of weeks before that, in Afghanistan, President Ghani fled. Very different outcome. That human resilience is something that has to be built, and that means sacrifice. It means risk, risk to property, risk to well-being, risk to family, risk to lives. All of those things are real if you believe it's an adversary. If you sincerely believe that the Chinese Communist Party is evil and intent, I do, then you have to prepare through good leadership for the moment when they decide it is time, because it is that preparation which will convince them not to do it. Right? Indeed, you're not preparing for a war. You're preparing to be sufficiently resilient that anybody who stares at it says, not going to do it. And so that, if you ask me, power, water, culture, all of these information flows, those are the things that you have well within your ability to do and achieve. And if done well, you'll never have to confront that bad day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And last but not least, Executive Director of the European Values Center for Security Policy, Jakub Janda.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, I run a think tank which is trying to build relations between countries in Europe, mainly Central Europe and Taiwan, in political and defense terms. We are the only think tank with permanent office here in Taiwan. So I have two short questions. One is that when you were the secretary, you were leading the US policy of trying to push US allies, like Europeans, to decrease dependency on the PRC. And you were very successful in pushing Europeans to kick out Chinese telecommunications companies from European telecommunications sector. Czech Republic also, I think, proudly the first one in 2019 to take legal action against Huawei and ZTE, thanks to your support. So my first question is, which other areas should democratic countries decrease our dependency on the CCP? Because it's crucial for any future decisions.
Go ahead, you ask your second one, I'll do them both. Go ahead.
Okay. The second one is actually, how can the US actually help other European countries to support more to Taiwan? Because many Europeans are very hesitant about linking up with Taiwan. How can the new administration actually do more so more Europeans actually build this deterrent bloc against this PRC with Taiwan? Thank you.
You bet. So first question is sort of what are the other spaces where we are deeply connected to China and they hold a lot of leverage as a result of that? Some of them are obvious, but two thoughts. The first is we should identify them. I was just speaking with Miles about this. We identified during COVID about 800 critical, some of them were services, items, they were described here, but there are about 800 things that said, man, if the Chinese decided to shut this off tomorrow, we'd have a significant problem, a material problem, finding alternative sourcing over any reasonable time frame. You gotta go do them all. And this will take a long time. We didn't become as connected to China overnight. You won't get out of it overnight. But I must say, in the, what are we now, 6 years on, something like that, 5.5, 6 years on, since COVID, I've actually seen businesses doing this. Sometimes at the guidance of government in the way that we did with Huawei and ZTE, but often just because they got smarter and understood risk, business risk, political risk associated with their business. That is, simply executing their fiduciary duties as leaders and directors. They could see we certainly can't have sole source items that come from China. We have to have secondary options. We have to have alternatives to that. Not everyone. Products made for China in China, they're all still there. I get that. But I think first of things like telecommunications, things that are truly strategic. I think of components that go into defense systems. Those are the places we ought to move fastest, hardest, and sometimes require governmental spending to facilitate that. That is, there was a reason this was all sitting inside the Chinese Communist Party, right? It was cheap. And so there's an economic component to that as well. The second thing I think every government should consider is we should never forget how dependent China is on us, all of us. So while it feels sometimes like, gosh, they have us, they have a lot of leverage on us, Xi Jinping is deeply aware how much he depends on all of us, including Taiwan. Right? So and we should remind him of that. And importantly, we should remind the Chinese people how their lives would change were he to take some action that drove a real break. And that has an important element too. The second question again, one more time.
How to do Europeans support Taiwan?
How to get the Europeans to support Taiwan? You have to beat them. And what I mean by that, please, I know somebody's going to report that. What I mean by that is you have to be relentless in articulating why it's in their best interest, right? And when I say beat them, these are my friends. I'm Italian, right? These are my people. I love them dearly. You have to continue to beat the drum about to explain to them the risks associated with failing to get that right. And they know it, and it gets back to what we were just speaking to. They have deep economic ties, right? The Germans are selling many cars, right? Lots of agriculture products come out of Europe and flow. So, and by the way, those are real. I'm not making light of any of them. Those are serious matters. You have to keep economies going. But we should continue to beat the drum about the risks associated with not beginning to move down the correct path. I think the good news is the conflict in Europe has shifted European mindset on this. They saw what happened with the energy dependency on Russia, and so I think they are not only more open to this idea, but now have accepted it and are trying to put together pathways to reduce that dependency that are serious. So I don't think it'll take as much push from the United States, but they're also going to look to see if we're real. Like, are we asking them to do it but not doing it ourselves? And if so, they'll say, well, fine, we're not going to go first. So the U.S. will have to lead on this, and I think if we do that and we continue to tell the story, to beat the drum, I think we'll all get there, and I think that'll be really good for Taiwan.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Thank you, Jakub. And right now, people in the audience and the media can ask some questions. We'll go the same way Be concise, one question, one answer. If you don't speak English, I can translate it into English or Mandarin.
Zhongzi Yu from Taiwan Good Association. I'm also a consultant of FRA. My question for you is echo to your speech. You mentioned that China is using United Front tactics, exploiting democratic vulnerabilities to sabotage, infiltrate, and erode the cohesion of democratic society. So my question is, should we work together for all democracy, in particularly for silent change? If the answer is yes, could you further enlighten us how to come up with this kind of cooperative mechanism among democracies?
It's a really good question. The answer is yes, we should work together on it. I'm not as clear on the tools. This is a very difficult problem set in free societies, where we want people to be able to say and speak, and if they disagree with me, to get in my face and disagree with me, right? We encourage this, and they exploit that. In the United States, it's the First Amendment freedoms. They use this to their advantage. It doesn't mean we have to lay down and allow actual Chinese agents to operate inside of our country. That's not part of our First Amendment. There are many vectors of this, and we should work on them all together. They start with good intelligence services. That is, understanding who are just U.S. citizens, sometimes of Chinese ethnicity, sometimes not, right? They can be Italian, working on behalf of the Chinese government as well. And we should do our level best to make sure we understand who is being driven as an actual actor on behalf of the Chinese government, and we should prosecute them under the laws that we have that are available. We should absolutely do that. Second, you have to develop counter-narratives. This was really to your point. We have to become much better at articulating and explaining, like, no, those are just Chinese bots. So I have a Twitter account. I don't know, I think I have like 1.5 million, or I guess it's X now, I'm behind times. I think I have 1.5 million people who follow me. I'll bet half of them are bots. I hope they're all real people. But if you see the comments, the Chinese are working hard against Mike Pompeo, trying to take down, and by this would be true for many Americans, right? They want to take down our narratives. Every time they will respond to this speech that I gave today and the comments that I gave. They'll use some phrase that I used, and they'll turn it and they will run it through Chinese media, and then they will, importantly, not just broadcast it inside their country through CGTV and the like, but into the West as well. Mike Pompeo, the fool, he's going to create war, whatever the storyline might be. We need to actively, collectively counter these stories as well. And I'll give you one other thought that is somewhat controversial. One of the places that they have proven inside the United States most effective at changing the narrative is inside our academic institutions, inside our elite universities. We don't have to suffer that. I'm not even talking here about research and theft of intellectual property. That is very real. That is it's a similar problem, but discrete. But the narrative that the Chinese Communist Party uses on our campuses to impact 18, 19, 20-year-old American kids, and frankly kids studying in the United States from all across the world, is very real. And we ought to, I think, fully inside of American law and American tradition and ideas, we can push back against what they're doing in our universities today in ways that matters. And it starts with the university leadership recognizing that we have a problem. And I hope we'll get that part right. I'm not as optimistic that we will there. It's pretty deep. I hope that answers your question, at least in part. Yes, sir.
The lady over there was first, I think. Yeah.
And
she'll be asking a question in Mandarin.
美国总统当选人川普邀请中国国家主席习近平参加他的就职典礼。那从这件事情出发，你将如何看待川普上任后的美中往来？这一点将如何影响美台关系以及两岸局势？此外，您4年前在尼克森图书馆发表的一场演说，对中国表达了非常强硬的立场。你认为当时的观点在现在依然适用吗？特别是针对即将上台的川普政府？谢谢。
Could you please introduce yourself? 您是哪一个单位？对，媒体的话。
你好，我是联合报张婉欣，谢谢。
Okay, this is the journalist from the United News, 联合报, and the question is that President-elect Trump last time said that there is a possibility of him inviting Chairman Xi of China to take part in the inauguration ceremony. And what is your perception of this, and how will this impact the U.S., Taiwan, and the U.S.-China relationships? And there is the second question, is that some time ago you delivered a speech, when you were the Secretary of the State, you delivered a speech at the Nixon's Library, and it was very, you have pointed out like many issues that the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese government have. Do you still have the same position as you used to at that time, especially when President Trump is going to become the next president?
I'd have to go back, and I remember that day. It was very hot, middle of COVID. I'm pretty confident that the things I said that day I stand by. I'd have to go read it jot and tittle, but I'd be surprised if any of my views have changed materially about the imperative to recognize the risk to the West as broadly defined, people who respect human dignity and property rights and the rule of law. And then we had to confront it. That was the core of that speech that day. President Trump's, so with the ability to go revisit exactly what I said, I think I stand behind all of it. Your question about President Trump inviting Xi Jinping, I think actually gets to the question you asked a little bit earlier. Like, people see that and they're like, huh? And remember, this is a president who directed his then CIA director to go to Pyongyang and meet with Chairman Kim. It wasn't because of a failure to understand that Chairman Kim has destroyed the lives of 25 million North Koreans and rules autocratically, and so had, frankly, a few weeks before I took my first trip, had killed an American, Otto Warmbier, who had died as a result of his captivity in North Korea. This isn't a president who doesn't get that, who doesn't understand it. It is a president who thinks if we as senior leaders can engage and be clear about our expectations, the risk of war, nuclear war, kinetic fights, cyber conflict, the risk can be diminished. And if we make our expectations clear, some of those expectations are security related, some of them are commercially related, some of them are attempt to change a set of broader relationships. He fundamentally believes that, look, I'm the President of the United States, I have a responsibility to talk to these folks. And doesn't mean that I'm enamored by them, doesn't mean that I share their value set in any material way. It just means I'm going to have that conversation. I think the invitation to Xi Jinping was very much the same. I think he would have loved to have Xi Jinping go watch the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America. Like, think about that. Think about Xi Jinping at this inauguration. It would have been just crazy. It would have been lovely. Right? There he is watching people, many of whom did not vote for Donald Trump. Right? Think about this. When you get the image that day, you're going to have all the members of Congress sitting behind President Trump, the current Congress. Half of them are fighting him tooth and nail every day on political matters. Half of them, fully half, right? It's 218 to 216 or 219 to 215. It's right down the middle. The American people who were in the audience that day, well, it would be 47% of them who opposed Donald Trump, many of whom worked vigorously to see that he not be elected again. And Xi Jinping would have been there to see that. That model that is so fundamentally at odds. And I think part of this, by the way, I suspect Xi Jinping will not make it to Washington that day. I suspect it's because he knows what he would witness as well. He would witness the success, the prosperity, the enormous chaotic beauty of democracies in the United States of America. And so if I were to sort of say what should one make of it, I think that would be it. Make of the president's invitation for Xi Jinping to come to the United States for the inauguration. That would be it.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. I think the legislator Chan had a follow-up question.
Actually, just quick remarks to Jakub. I think Europeans' destiny is our destiny. Our destiny is Europeans' destiny as well. Look at those Korean soldiers. They are fighting in Ukraine. So our destiny is related, not only related, it's connected. So it's not how we persuade Europeans to support us. We are persuading Europeans to support themselves. Because look at what happened in Ukraine. Thank you. The lady over there was first. Yeah. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Pompeo. Very nice to see you in Taiwan again. My name is Ting Liu. I'm the foreign affairs correspondent with TVBS News in Taiwan. So I have a question for you. Is that we actually observed that you have been quite a principled statesman, holding values that you actually hold very dear to your heart and believe, and you try to deliver them as best as you could when you're in office. But I'm just curious, as someone who has worked so closely with Trump, in his first term, and as we are approaching Trump 2.0, I'm just curious, where we are also welcoming a very Taiwan-friendly Marco Rubio into office. And also, just wondering how confident are you that Trump will allow Rubio to form foreign policies freely on his free will, as to what extent, especially on Taiwan, especially on cross-straits, and not forgetting that there's also Elon Musk in office. Just curious, since you were the former your state to Trump.
Yes. So I look, in some ways I've answered the question. I hear this phrase, Trump 2.0. Very unlikely that President Trump's going to change much. And by the way, I'm an old man now too. The chance of Mike Pompeo changing much is pretty low. We all know who we are, and so my full expectation is why I answered a previous question this way. My full expectation is you will see much the same worldview emanate from the White House, broadly speaking, and the American security establishment that you saw in the first 4 years. I don't think it'll be dramatically different from that, because the imperative when you're in office, you're no longer campaigning, and no insult to any academics in the room, but this isn't theoretical. This isn't about writing a good book or a wonderful essay. I've written a bad book and a bad essay or two. But this is about execution of security policy. This is real. And when you get in there, it is very real. And you wake up every morning and read the intelligence from around the world, and you're like, those folks want to take my head off, right? Here's what's really going on, and that drives how you think about actual execution of policy. And I don't think that'll be very different. Look, the team that President Trump has chosen to put around him is pretty darn good. I know Senator Rubio very well. I know the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, pretty well. I know the gentleman who will have the job that I first had, John Ratcliffe, who will be the director of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. These are people who will see that data set that I just described and recognize the imperative to get it right again. So I fully expect that's what you'll see. Last thought, you said, will he allow Secretary Rubio to drive foreign policy? Foreign policy in America is driven by the President of the United States. It was under President Biden. It was under President Trump in his first term. The rest of us are mere cabinet members, doing our level best to try and give him the best wisdom that we can, and then when given instructions to go, do our best to execute. That'll be the same for Secretary Rubio and the team as well. President Trump will be driving the policy agenda inside the United States, both our security policy, our foreign policy, and our U.S. domestic policy as it relates to security as well. So we should never forget who got 270 electoral votes and who didn't. By the way, he would remind me of that all the time. How many do you get, Mike? Sir, no, I got that.
Thank you, Secretary. Gentleman over there? Yeah.
Yes. My name is Lu. I call myself an amateur history. I have one question. We see in last year and year before that the United States and many European countries are saying that the United Nations Assembly's resolution 2758 has been misinterpreted. So they seems are encouraging Taiwan to enter to the United Nations again. Should Taiwan, at this moment in time, try actively to apply to enter the United Nations? That's my question.
I consider myself less than an amateur historian, having lived a little bit of it. I don't know the answer to the question about at this moment in time they should try. That's a political decision that the Taiwanese leadership will have to make alongside with input from elsewhere. If you're asking a separate question, which is, ought Taiwan to be part of the United Nations, the answer is, of course, yes, very simply. There, I'll stop there, because it's not complicated. But the political process, that is, how best to achieve that and what the right timing to achieve that, I don't know the answer to that. This may be it. I'll give one last thought that's a little bit outside of your question, but is germane. And I think the absence of Taiwan inside the United States furthers the argument that I'm about to make. The United Nations is fundamentally broken. It is an institution created now some 75 years ago with a noble purpose and cause and a very clear mission set. And it has moved a long ways from that mission set today. And that's unfortunate. And what results is it finds itself no longer the fierce defender of basic human rights. It finds itself no longer the defender of national sovereignty for all peoples and all nations, and finds itself now in the grips of the Chinese Communist Party in far too material a way. So this doesn't relate to, but by the way, the fact that Taiwan's not a member, I think, bolsters my argument. But separate from that, I think we all ought to really rethink international institutions that are no longer fit for purpose. That after decades and decades, when they may well have been important and decent and central to global peace and security, if they've moved away from their mission and are no longer delivering that, we ought to rethink what a different model might look like.
And that gentleman over there. Yes, I'm Sang Hu, and I'm both a commentator and also a lawyer, a Taiwanese and a diaspora Hong Konger as well. Question one, is there a prospect to free Jimmy Lai and other political prisoners in Hong Kong? I would say that Trump has mentioned in the radio program well before the election, saying that he has 100% confidence in freeing Jimmy Lai. What would you say to this prospect, and also how it could be done, especially when Mike Pence will be visiting Hong Kong in the next few days? So would there be a prospect? And question two, the most critical word in the dictionary, as mentioned by Trump, is tariff. And are you a tariff guy, and are you a tariff king as well? And also, do you think that what should Taiwan do in terms of facing Trump's policy for U.S.-Taiwan tariff? And also, what should Taiwan do to counter against the kind of washing and laundering of the country of origin issues that China goods sent to Taiwan and the United States?
Sure.
What should Taiwan do?
Yeah, that's three questions, three big questions, but all important. And I had the incredible privilege to meet Jimmy Lai in my office when I was the Secretary of State. I want to be a little careful about the things I say today, other than he's wrongly detained. He was a man who just wanted to speak in a way that Hong Kongers had been permitted to do for an awfully long time. I'm speaking a little more slowly here because one of the things that breaks my heart the most about my time as Secretary of State was our failure to extend the freedom for the people of Hong Kong. I don't know that in the end we had the capacity to completely thwart it. Maybe we could have. But I actually think it was possible for the United Kingdom and others to have done more to extend it and create more freedom than we did. And the end result is we not only have Jimmy Lai, but others who are being prosecuted under this new Chinese national security law, and it's tragic. I saw the reporting that former Vice President Pence, a dear friend, is headed to Hong Kong. I look forward to seeing the remarks that he makes. Tariffs. Yes, President Trump refers to himself as tariff man. I didn't make it up, he did. I don't share his love for tariffs broadly. I'm pretty diplomatic. And when I say that, I understand their utility, and we should definitely, all of us, we should use tariffs where it makes sense for our country and for the world. We shouldn't be afraid of them, but we should be deeply aware of the second and third order implications that flow from a broad-based tariff system. Will it work? Will it achieve the end objectives? You place a tariff for a purpose. I want to correct a trade imbalance. I want to punish a country for flowing fentanyl into the United States. You can imagine a host of reasons one might impose economic tariff or a sanction. They're kind of flip sides of the same activity. But you impose economic costs on your adversary to convince them to change their behavior. But that's your objective. And so I'm all for tariffs where the end goal is to actually achieve that. And so one ought to be sufficiently targeted. They ought to be put in place with a clear condition for their removal. That is, when the following changes and comes in accord with what it is I hope that country will do with respect to the United States, we're going to remove it. And we actually did that a handful of times in the Trump administration. We placed economic sanctions on countries, convinced them to change their behavior. And they did, and then we reverted back to the situation ex ante. That's what I would hope President Trump will do and how he'll use tariffs. He does think about trade balance. Taiwan has a trade surplus with the United States that is not insignificant. So you all should think about that as you engage with the United States moving forward, and with the new administration, you should think about what are the tools you can do to continue to deliver good outcomes for Taiwan. Always, you should put Taiwan first, just as President Trump puts America first. But see what things there are that might be done to address what President Trump views as a real challenge for the United States. Does that answer the second part of it? Yeah. I don't know how much time we have. Yeah.
It's Mike. Okay. Because my question is already proposed by that gentleman. I want to say again, Taiwan right now, we have a very many of key issues. The first is how we can get into the United States, become the member nations of the United Nations. I think you are the former General Secretary of the U.S. You should understand what measure, what pace, what ways can easily get into this goal. So give us just a single about this. And second, you just said Taiwan show his property, his way, say Taiwan is the number one in the world. Actually, we are the very important nation in the world. I want, at this opportunity, I want to introduce myself, because now I'm producing a television program called Linking 368 Taiwan, and tapping 368 Township of Taiwan, one township, one program, into by English version, will broadcast into the world. My wording is just ask. I hope the nation, the worldwide of the people understand, know Taiwan. So now we are already having this program 26. There are 368 programs will be produced in the future. I need 6.5 years. So this kind of waiting, we just waiting to tell in the all over the world of people understand Taiwan is very special, very stronger
and may contribute for the democracy of the world. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm not sure I know exactly. You asked about the UN. I don't know the solution. You said I should know. I probably should, but I don't know the solution. It's one of the challenges that, right, we have processes there. There are rules for the General Assembly and the introduction of membership. If you look at the staff at the United Nations today, the Chinese have a huge number of people working inside the organization. It's a little bit down in the weeds. They really shape the agenda there and impact how other nations think about Taiwan. And if you're a small African country or a small country in the Middle East or someplace, the pressure on you to conform, or at least not to step out of line and create waves, is enormous. And so, America should step up its diplomatic efforts in that regard. But I don't have a easy, quick fix. I do want to get back to something that was asked before and I didn't address, which I think is, by the way, your point about Taiwan being important and unique and special, I completely agree. It is a linchpin for the American economy. That is not lost on American leaders, I can assure you. Maybe not every American appreciates and understands it, but American leaders understand the centrality of what it is happens in this very special place. And to protect and preserve its democracy matters to us. Selfishly, for the United States of America, wholly apart from ideas of basic human rights and freedom, it matters for the United States. The previous question asked about what could Taiwan do to stop, I'll call it laundering, tariff laundering. That's kind of an Italian term. I'm a mafia guy, right? Gotta figure out how to move the money. It's essentially what it is. It's a laundering operation, right? How do you make stuff there and avoid paying the taxes or the bills? The United States has a lot of work to do there. But it does mean when we do that work and do it well, we will put burdens on every country who's transiting Chinese goods. That is, we'll have reporting requirements that will come out of the Department of Commerce, most likely reporting requirements to demonstrate the origin of the product. And there'll be times when it's very difficult to do. And by the way, what is a product? What are the pieces? I've been down this rabbit hole a few times. Very, very complex, but we should set up a rigid set of rules, a regime that is clear to everyone about how it is the rules are intended to be enforced so that these tariffs get applied properly, accurately, whatever tariffs are in place. So there's tariffs around all over the world today, right? This isn't a new concept that Donald Trump invented. Your point about the Chinese will go to great ends to move this product through someplace. In the United States case, it's most often Mexico. By dollar volume, that's the biggest location for them to sort of move goods. But it happens in Malaysia, Indonesia, here, Singapore, lots of places as well. We ought to just tell every country, here's the rules for American imports. Here's what you need to demonstrate that it's actually an import from your country, an export from your country imported into ours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. This was the final question. We're out of time already. Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all very much. Bless you. Have a great day.
Hope you'll have more opportunities to visit Taiwan often. God bless Taiwan and God bless the United States. Thank you. And for the final remarks, I want to ask Dr. Li Yiming, Chairman of the Formosan Republican Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pompeo, for your inspiring and insightful speech. Really, we appreciate you made a special trip come here. We are all listen from you, but we don't know how to do. Yeah. But I try to take your point. You speak of you support the Taiwan independent country, but make our hope, encourage us to provoke you to be a sovereign country in the future. That's what we are meant for. You come here to let us to inspire our role model in the long time, because our country has a divided two parties. Another party is opposed to the communist country. And the native Taiwanese, we are stand for the independent country, for the freedom, like United States. And we are stand for the human rights and democracy. So now I'm getting old now. I'm 81. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. But once more, thank you for your share your experience with us, and you are the distinguished statesman and the politician, and most important, you are the human being, and that's we respect you. And once again, for your being with us, and thank you all the panelists and all the people attended this meeting. But let us continue to work together in the brighter future. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you everyone for coming. Happy New Year. Wish you have a great day. God bless Taiwan and God bless the United States. Thank you.